Just Cheesy the Podcast, presented by Just Cheesy Productions.
Hi there, I'm your host, Fondue. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about fondue again.
Fondue!
We're going to talk about oil fondue, meat fondue, broth fondue, better known as hot pot. We're going to talk about the World Cheese Awards, Veterans Day, and of course, we're going to tell a very cheesy joke.
Yeah, we are.
Stay tuned for Season 2, Episode 26 of Just Cheesy the Podcast. Fun with Fondue Part 2. So cheesy, last week we talked about Fun with Fondue Month Part 1.
Yeah.
And we covered mostly cheese fondue. We also covered fondue for Fondue Day back in April.
I remember.
In Season 1, Episode 21. But today we're going to move a little bit past cheese and go on to something called...
Oh, boy.
something that is French sounding but is Swiss in
no.
origin called Fondue Bourguignonne.
Okay.
Again, sorry about my pronunciations.
Yeah.
According to tasteatlas.com, this French-sounding dish started with field workers who didn't have time to go back home for a meal. They brought pots of oil to the fields and came together to cook pieces of meat.
Yum.
Traditionally, the meat used in this dish was beef, but apparently meat fondues can be made with pork, chicken, liver, and other vegetables.
Vegetable?
I'm just going to say I'm sorry right now for this next one. According to earthfoodandfire.com, German meat fondue called Fleischfondue was made in Germany, and this one could actually use either oil or broth. An oil-based meat fondue would essentially deep fry the food, and it would take anywhere from 25 to 60 seconds in the oil, and this depends on how well done you like your meat.
Right.
They suggest using an oil with a high smoke point, such as canola or sunflower oil, palm or coconut oil.
Okay.
When selecting your meat, you need to make sure it's something that'll stay on the skewer when you're putting it in the oil.
Of course.
They suggest using mini meatballs or sausages or cubed meats.
Yum.
It should be pretty thin so that it'll cook appropriately.
Right.
Commonly, this type of fondue is served with condiments such as Dijon mustard, chutney, salsa, and pickled cucumbers, onions, and olives are also great additions.
Yummy.
In the provided recipe, they suggest heating your oil to 375 on the stove and then pouring that hot oil into the fondue pot right before serving,
Okay.
lighting the flame to keep the oil hot.
Wow.
And the website called bestfondue.com has a recipe for seafood fondue. This one is another hot oil recipe.
Yum.
And they suggest using fish, lobster, crab, or even shrimp. On the website allrecipes.com, they have a recipe for coq au vin. This recipe includes vegetable stock, mushrooms, onions, garlic, and red wine. This recipe suggests not only meat, but vegetables and potatoes.
Yum.
But broth fondue has a very long history.
It does?
Technically, it's called Chinese hot pot.
Oh.
According to a website called pleasethepalate.com, Chinese hot pot originated in Mongolia more than 1,000 years ago.
Holy cow.
The basic stock was made using water, salt, and a soup base. Typically, the broth is fragrant and mild, but some of the popular hot pot restaurants also include a Szechuan style, which is very spicy. People get their choice of vegetable and meat, and they get to dip it in the broth and wait for it to cook. A dish called shabu shabu is one form of Japanese hot pot. This broth is made with hot water and kelp. The cooking method in the Chinese hot pot would have you leave the meat in the pot to cook. But with shabu shabu, you take a thin slice of meat or vegetable, you place it in the broth, and you swish it back and forth a few times.
Okay.
And the name shabu shabu comes from this, as it means swish, swish. And some common condiments for this would be ponzu or sesame seed sauce.
Yum.
And at the end of the meal, noodles are added to the leftover broth and it's eaten as a soup.
Whoa.
And according to Wikipedia, shabu shabu is just one type of Nabemono. Nabemono is a compound word. Nabe means cooking pot and mono means stuff.
Wow.
So literally, Nabemono is just food in a pot.
Yum.
According to the JapaneseWay.com, Nabemono is a Japanese hot pot dish served with meat and vegetables.
Yum.
And like we talked last week about cheese fondue etiquette, Nabemono has some as well.
Wow.
They seem to have the no double dipping rule.
Oh, yeah.
They suggest using the opposite end of your chopsticks while moving the food versus eating it.
Yeah.
They also talk about, if you see something in the pot that looks great, only take it out if it's yours.
Yeah.
There are other types of Nabemono besides shabu shabu.
There are?
One dish is called chankanabe.
Oh, no.
I'm so sorry for the pronunciation.
Oh, boy.
This one is to help sumo wrestlers increase their body mass.
What?
This dish typically has more ingredients than the others.
Wow.
It includes meatballs, chicken, vegetables, napa cabbage, and udon.
Yum.
Another dish is called matsunabe.
Okay.
This dish became popular in the 1990s. It has a stronger broth using either miso or soy sauce, but the main ingredient is usually beef or pork.
Yum.
And the pork is offal,
What?
OFFAL,
Oh.
which is the animal's entrails
Ew.
and organ meats.
Oh, that is awful.
It's typically boiled with cabbage and garlic to help the flavor of the broth.
Okay.
There's something called sukiyaki.
Okay.
This dish uses thin slices of beef,
Ooh.
and the broth uses dashi, sake, sugar, mirin, and soy sauce.
Yum.
And odin includes a soy-based dashi broth and contains eggs.
Yum.
Check out the Wikipedia page for Nabemono to see other regional and many, many other varieties.
Yum.
Nabemono, not a sponsor,
Nope.
but if it were, its ad would go right here. Have you ever wanted to listen to the web?
Yeah.
Well, Newsly makes that possible.
They do?
They're an all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android.
Super app.
You can listen to trending articles on the web on topics that you choose and get them read to you in a natural human voice.
What kind of topics?
Sports,
Cheese?
tech, business, science.
Cheese?
I'm sure there's even cheese.
Yay!
They even have an entire section for podcasts.
Are we there?
Of course we are.
Ooh.
It's one of my new favorite podcast apps. They even have digital radio.
Holy cow.
Just go to www.newsly.me to download it free.
Whoa.
Or use the link in the description. If you use the promo code CHEESY, that'll get you 1 month free premium subscription.
Yay, Newsly.
Now, back to the podcast. It's time for my favorite segment.
This week in cheese.
According to perishablenews.com, the World Cheese Awards for 2022 were held in a convention center in Wales.
Okay.
There were 4,434 cheeses from 42 countries around the world
Holy
for
cow.
this cheese-only event.
Whoa.
And it says here that the cheeses were sent to Wales by boat, truck, train, and plane
Wow.
via 19 consolidation points around the world.
Whoa.
And if you recall, last year in 2021, the winning cheese came from Oviedo, Spain, and it was crafted by a family-run Spanish cheesemaker, and that cheese was called Quesos y Besos,
That's right.
or Cheese and Kisses.
Aw.
This year's winner goes to a Swiss cheesemaker,
Oh, boy.
Vorder Fultigen,
Oh.
and Affineur
No.
Gourmino.
The struggle is real.
They crowned Le Gruyère AOP sur Choix as this year's world champion cheese.
Nice.
These cheeses were judged in a single day
Whoa.
as 250 experts from 38 nations
Wow.
studied appearance, texture, aroma, and flavor.
Nice.
Bronze, silver, gold, and super gold accolades were awarded during the sessions.
Nice.
And in our show notes, we've got a link to the super gold top 16 cheeses for you to review.
Ooh.
On Friday, November 11th, in the United States, we celebrated Veterans Day.
Yeah.
We want to give thanks to all the men and women in our military services and their families for all the sacrifices and everything they do.
Thank you.
On a website called betterworldbooks.com, we came across a book called The Fondue and Buffet Cookbook.
Ooh.
This cookbook is for sale on this website and on Etsy.
Ooh.
The cookbook is called Recipes on Parade, Fondue and Buffet Military Officers' Wives Cookbook, 1972.
Whoa.
This cookbook was compiled by military officer wives
Nice.
who were stationed all over the world.
Wow.
It has lots of different recipes, including fondue, buffet, potluck, and parties.
Ooh.
And once the book comes in, because of course I ordered
Of
it,
course.
we'll be able to share some of it on our
Yeah.
Instagram.
I'm ready for a joke fondue.
Why did I stop making jokes about Swiss cheese?
Oh, no. Why?
Because it had too many holes. Get it?
Oh.
Because it had too many holes?
Yeah, I get it. It was dumb.
I know, but it was a little bit cheesy. Thanks for listening to Just Cheesy the Podcast, Season 2, Episode 26, Part 2 of Fun with Fondue Month.
Thanks.
Join us next week as we conclude Fun with Fondue Month with episode number 27.
Stay cheesy, everybody.